Dates, times, and time zones can be quite confusing on Make because what you see might not be what you get. And why is that? We are going to look into this in this lesson. First, we have sample data that we receive like in the previous lessons, the same sample data set with the current date time, and it's in Prague time, so it's +1, 1058. And then we are parsing the date to get it into a proper date time format. And then the output looks like this. It shows January 6th of 2023 at 10:58 a.m. And if I hover over it, it shows 9:58 actually. And why is that? Because the raw date format is always in UTC. And then what you see, what is displayed is my user time zone setting. So whatever I set up for my own user will be how dates are displayed inside Make. Then last but not least, we are formatting the date into simple format here and then transferring it over to Google Sheets. Now let's run this again and check how the dates behave. So again, we have 11:03 now as output for current date and time. We parse the date. It shows 11:03 because I'm in the same time zone as Prague. I'm in Europe, Berlin. And if I hover over it, it shows the UTC time, which is 10:03. And then if I use the formatDate function by default, if I don't specify any time zone in the parameters, it will use the organization time zone for any kind of function in here. And that is also Europe, Berlin, so it's the same time. And then if I check it on Google Sheets, it's actually the same time. So nothing got changed here. Now let's make it a little bit more tricky because so far it's clear. And that's also the recommendation that try to keep the user time zone and the organization time zone always the same to avoid any confusion. How to set or change the organization time zone, just go to organization, then at the top right, go to change details, and here you have the time zone settings. Let's change the organization time zone to New York for once and run our scenario again. First, I'm gonna refresh it and run it again. Receiving the sample data, it's still the current date and time in +1 time. Then we are parsing the date. If I check it out, it's still showing 11:04, which is the user time. Then if I hover over it, it shows the UTC time, which is 10:04, 1 hour back. And now if I take the Google Sheets output, this actually shows 5:04. And that is because now the formatDate function used the organization time zone here, which is New York. And that's why it formatted the date in New York time zone, and that is -5. Now, if I go to the history of the scenario, it shows 11:04. Even though I changed the organization to New York time zone, this still shows in user time zone. So you can remember everything you see should be in user time zone and it's displayed in user time zone by Make. So you can see it in your own settings. Now, if we also switch the user time zone to New York, you can do that by going to your profile at the bottom left and then going to change details at the top right again and changing your time zone to New York. Then going back to your scenario and refreshing it. By the way, let's check the history first. Now the history got updated as well, and now it's showing in New York time zone as well because we updated our user time zone and that is reflecting here. If we go into the diagram now and run this one more time, we can still see the time is still Prague time, 11:06 +1. Then the parseDate, it actually shows now 5:06 because now my user time zone is New York and it displays the time in New York time zone. And the raw data, so if I hover over it, it still shows 10:06, which is UTC time. And then if I go to the Google Sheet, it outputs 5:06 again because the organization setting is 5:06. By changing the organization to Berlin time zone, but keeping my user time zone at New York. So if I refresh here, checking the history first, it still shows in 5:06 because that's my user time zone. Then going into scenario, run this once. We check the data, it's still 11:07, which is the current date time in Prague time. Then if I hover over it, it shows New York time zone because my user time zone is still New York. The raw is 10:07. And then if we're adding it to Google Sheet, it shows 11:07 and not my user time zone because the organization is set to Berlin. I hope that makes sense. And one more thing to add to this, the scheduling of scenario is always based on the organization settings. So if your user setting is Europe, Berlin, or New York, and you schedule it here, it will always use the organization setting, and it's also displayed below the field. So make sure that you set the correct time based on the organization time zone settings and not your user settings. This will also not update the time. So if I have it to set to 9:27 Europe Berlin time and now change the organization time zone to something else, let's say New York, and save it, then going back to my scenario, refreshing the page and checking out the schedule, it now shows New York, but the time did not update. So you have to make sure if you're changing the organization time zones that you also update the schedules if you want it to run at that specific time over there, or keep running it at the same time that it was set to before. Because obviously 9:27 Europe Berlin time is something completely different than 9:27 New York time. I hope this helped clear some confusion about times and time zones on Make, and that it makes now sense how times and dates are being displayed for you, and you know how you can change it. Just a reminder, make sure to use the same user time zone as the organization time zone for the sake of simplicity.